Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Keane, online fitness coach, nutritionist, and 3-time best-selling author, here to help you by deconstructing expert guests on all things health, fitness, and mindset. Today's guest is the trilogy, the trifecta, the hat-trick appearance of author, athlete, and entrepreneur Rob Lipsett. Rob is one of my favorite people. He's been on this podcast several times, as I mentioned. He's somebody that I've known in the fitness industry for years now. 2015 or 2016, I think, was the first time we met. And in today's podcast, we go in a whole range and host of different directions when it comes to topics that we cover. We speak about motivation, where it comes from, the tool of monk mode and when to use it, because of Rob's reintroduction or going back into the world of physique competitions, and finding that when you're feeling that complacency in life and you're feeling a bit stuck, to set a big goal so that you can work towards it. The deep work, being productive and finding passion in your life, and the question that everyone needs to ask themselves regularly. We also go into the importance of choosing the right spouse and learning from past relationships and business failures, amongst a lot more topics. So without further ado, here is today's trifecta, trilogy, hat-trick appearance of athlete and entrepreneur Rob Lipsett on where motivation comes from, getting out of your comfort zone, and the importance of choosing the right spouse. Enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm delighted to be joined today with my guest, Rob Lipsett. Most of you will know Rob either from following his massive YouTube channel of over 470,000 followers and his Instagram page with over 650,000 followers, but this is also his hat-trick appearance, or his trilogy appearance on the podcast.
He was trilogy. That sounds cool, doesn't it?
Well, that's it. I'm putting that into the label, into the description, the trilogy appearance. He was on in episode 80. I remember, Rob, actually, you were one of my first guests in terms of batching guests initially in the show, and then we did an episode for 205, both of which I'll link in the description for people to check out. And for those of you who don't know, on top of running, owning, and being part of several businesses, he's also the host of the podcast The Game Plan, named after his best-selling book, which can be found everywhere podcasts are found. I'm looking forward to talking all things motivation, gratitude, and just a general catch-up in today's show. Rob, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. That was some intro. That is put me in a great mood. Thank you.
I've got you at a good time. We were saying, and we might come back to this later, because one of the things I love so much about you on a personal level is your ability to perform a kind of a peak performance. And you were like, it's a good time. I've got my nootropic drink. I'm here. I'm ready to give my best. And I love that. And that it's so funny because the episode 205 was exactly the same. You're like, look, I'm here to give my best. And that hasn't changed. And that's going to be a topic of today's podcast, in terms of keeping that level of motivation high, keeping that desire high to perform in whatever area you decide to spend your energy. But I want to jump back a little bit, Rob, to kick us off here and jump straight in to 2016. That was your last show, if I'm not mistaken. And recently you went back competing in physique competitions, and we messaged on Instagram. And this is a very selfish/selfless approach, because something I've been thinking about a lot recently is staying motivated and putting yourself back into what you call monk mode, something we'll come back to later in the podcast. But I'm very curious, what was your reason for going back to physique competitions this year? And this is going to be applicable for those who are on a weight loss journey, might be ultra marathons, sports people, because that motivation and finding that motivation can be really difficult. So talk to us about your reasons for going back to physique competitions this year.
For sure. So I started this whole journey in the fitness industry in 2014. That's when I uploaded my first YouTube video. That's when I kind of started putting myself out there to the world. And that's when I got into things. And so 2016 is when I competed. I did a series, way back when. Half it was done on an iPhone. I did a series around it. And, it was one of the kind of like first things I did on YouTube was, document my prep into my first ever show. Or it was actually my third show. I did the first one in 2015, came dead last. And then the next year, I took it a lot more seriously and I got first in my class. And then, so since then, 2017, I started seeing a lot more success. I started to finally do this full time. I ended up, quitting my job around the 2016 mark. It's all blur these years. And for 2018 and 19, I started seeing some success. things started going well. I started to put the right systems in place, and I was doing this whole fitness thing full time. And then 2019, I planned to compete again, but then of course the pandemic happened. We had no events, no crowds, anything. And then so that was 19 and 20. And then that ended, and we got back into things. And then I said, I'm starting to get a little bit complacent. I need to bring that 2016 hunger back. I need to give myself something to struggle with, something to suffer for. And what's the most difficult thing is, 99% of people can't do it, is getting into extreme stage lean condition. And what's something that my audience likes to see me to do, and what's something that is also informative, not only for people who want to compete, that for people that want to just lose fat and get motivated as well. So I said, I'm going to document my prep, I'm going to compete again, and that's what I did. And I have to say, it's been the highlight of my year. And I got engaged last week.
I was about to say, I was like, I definitely won't be sharing this with your missus.
That was the highlight. But look, honestly, I've been on jets to Ibiza this year, yachts, or VIP, back entrance, all that good stuff. No, the best thing in life is when you're working towards a goal and you're pushing yourself and you're getting out of your comfort zone, and then you hit that goal. That is the ultimate fucking high. Jesus Christ, I'm telling you, right? Doesn't compare to anything. So that's been a huge highlight of my year. And the reason, to answer your question, the reason I did it again was to get out of that comfort zone, stop being complacent, and remind myself of the hunger that I once had and still do have. I have a lust for life. I'll never lose that hunger. But sometimes you still got to strip things back to where you started.
I'm very curious on that, because I'm very similar to you in that sense, Rob. When I'm working towards a big goal, that's when I feel at my happiness. It's when I feel at my most content. But I also can be a victim of the lows that come from not working towards a goal. I really struggled with my mental health during the pandemic, because I was training for Ironman, like I was training for events, and then everything got pulled and I felt really lost. Like I started drinking a lot more at home. Like I just had all these problems, and I had great people around me. Like I still have my family. I live quite close to where I grew up, but I really struggle when I'm not working towards those goals. For you, do you find that you have to always be working towards something, either in business or in fitness, or you can have that drop off?
Oh my God. So this is the perfect question. I'm having one of those weeks right now where I'm like, so post engagement, I was on holidays, August is generally a month where I kick back and relax. And then I'm like, oh, I'm not doing enough this week. And I'm like, Linda was like, relax, we just got back. We just got engaged on a holiday. And I'm having one of those weeks where I beat myself up so much for not being productive enough. We fall into the productivity trap where we think we always have to be productive. And this is my biggest fault. Like, if I was to say like, okay, I pick myself apart and say, Rob, what is something that you need to work on? And it's like, don't kill yourself when your productivity isn't at an all-time high. And I saw a great one. It's like, it's productive not being productive sometimes. Okay, like sometimes you need to take a week to chill, or 2 weeks or a month, and that's going to recharge you. If you're playing the long game, that shouldn't matter. That's going to recharge the batteries, and that's when moments of inspiration and creativity are going to come to you. So I'm sure you're the same. When we're going through those relaxed periods and maybe we're not working towards some grand big goal, then that's okay. And we shouldn't beat ourselves up for it. But I'm having one of those weeks where I'm like, okay, I need to do something big this week. And so, it's something that I definitely struggle with.
Yeah, I'm the same. I had Stephen Kotler on the podcast, who's a multiple times New York Times bestselling author. He wrote The Rise of Superman, amongst other high peak performance books. And he speaks about that you need that downtime. I think he called it trans hypofrontality, is where you're like going for a walk and you're chilling out, and then all these inspiration and ideas start to hit, and then you can actually perform at peak performance because you have that fuel in the tank from resting. Yeah. And a reframe I got from Oisin Mulligan, who's been on this podcast, that I'm not lazy, I'm just really good at resting. I was like, it's a nice reframe for those who are type A and just need to keep going. You did a mini series, Rob, with the Alpha League crew about going through what drives you and other humans to push themselves out of that comfort zone. And you mentioned the comfort zone there. Talk to us about the dangers of it. I know it might sound paradoxical that we're like, look, sometimes you should rest, but this really depends on your starting point. If you're someone who needs a bit of a kick up the ass, you don't struggle with rest, you struggle with motivation. Hence why you follow the likes of Rob and others who are going to inspire you. Those who are similar to us need sometimes to be grateful and gratitude and back off a small bit so that we can actually perform at that high level. But talk to us about your relationship with your comfort zone.
Absolutely. So note how I was like, sometimes we'll have maybe a bad week, a bad 2 weeks chilling, or a month. Well, let's cut it off there. There's some people that, and this is hard. It's hard to say, and you're going to have to ask anyone listening. You're going to have to ask yourself this. Has my life changed much from this day last year? Okay, has it? Be honest with yourself. Okay, and if it hasn't, you're in that comfort zone. That's where you are, and that's when nothing changes and nothing happens. And there's so many people that they go, oh shit, my life has been the exact same for the last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and I don't want it to be the same. If you want it to be, if you're happy where you are and you want it to be the same, that's fine. But if you want things to change, well, then you literally have to get out of that comfort zone. So what's harrowing as well, if you've got a phone, an iPhone, I know iPhone does this, I'm not too sure about Android, but it'll show you on your camera roll, it'll come up as like a notification, this day last year, and you can see what you're doing. And then you can scroll through and, you can see maybe your physique has progressed, maybe your life, where you live, your business, something, but you can see that progress in your camera roll. And, I'm very happy with my progress this year. But if you aren't, that's something you need to ask yourself. And the answer to that is just do something different. Do something you're not used to. Break up the mundane, break up your weekly routine. And so that's why if you're not happy with your current situation, just the first thing comes with, like, what is getting out of your comfort zone? Or it's doing something different that you're not used to. Okay, it's doing something that you don't really want to do. So that's it, and that's what you need to do if you're not happy with your current situation. And that's why it's so important. It's pretty much the answer to every life's problem. Like seriously, it can actually just be answered with getting out of your comfort zone. And I know it sounds so. We see it on Instagram. We've heard it all before, but it's true.
And the dangers in the dose with comfort zone for sure, because I think that you need a little bit of that step back to see what actually it is you want to do, because it can be very easy to fall into shiny object syndrome as well and constantly chasing, I've had people on fitness, and it's probably the same on yours, Rob, probably a bit more on my platform because I do so much between playing football and bodybuilding and CrossFit and ultramarathons and triathlon. So people will be like, look, I want to do it all. And I'm like, I have shiny object syndrome, but I stay very focused on one goal, hit that, and then move on to the next one. So that's a way to approach it. But something I'm going to throw at you is a quote of yours. I absolutely love this, and I'd love for you to expand on it because it's something that connected with me instantly when I heard you say it. Whenever you get complacent in life, monk mode is the answer. Talk to us about that.
Okay, so monk mode is basically a period of time where you focus on one, maybe 2 or 3 things at a time, and you kind of, how do I say, cut out all these big spikes in dopamine, okay? You cut out all, the delicious meals out, okay? You cut out the late nights, the high stimulant atmospheres, like, going, for example, going to like an EDM festival or a big concert, nights out with the DJs playing, there's bottles popping everywhere. All these sensations are coming at you, okay? All these distractions. So, these sensations are just distractions. You cut out drinking and any other vices you may have, and you just strip things back and you get yourself into a monk healthy routine. So for me, it'll look different for a lot of people. So for me, that would be, nailing my diet and my training protocol to a T. 8 hours sleep per night. At least 3 to 4 hours deep focused work in the morning. And just ticking those boxes, not going out and not cooking all my own meals or, getting them prepped for you, whatever it is. You're not just eating shit, basically, and really focusing on your health. And then, so for me, when I do that, I think, well, when anyone does that, everything just falls into place. So it's just a period of time, and the Irish could do this. It's a period of time when you're not going out, okay? You're not going out. You're taking time to yourself. You're saying no to a lot of things. Because, again, there's so much on and on. Hey, come down to the pub. Hey, come out to this concert. Hey, we're going on a weekend here. And you just have to say no for in my opinion, a minimum 2 to 3 months. You know, if you can do, some people do it for longer. Some people do these periods where they really need to sort their shit out for 6 months. That's amazing. But I think 3 months is the sweet spot. I did 4 months. I did February, March, April, May, the competition. And then as planned, I said, I'm going to have, you know, I've earned my summer. I'm going to go out, travel, and have a relaxing summer. But now I'm kind of going back into the little period of monk mode again. I think the best times of year, so, you know, pick a time where you're really actually going to stick to it. So for example, summer, not a good time to do monk mode, okay? But in the lead up to summer, you know, February, March, April, great. What the hell is on? St. Patrick's Day, that's it. Like, I'm sure you can survive without it. That's pretty much it. And then I think on the other side, just before Christmas, September, October, November are 3 great months to do it as well. So I'm going to kind of go into a very concentrated work block now. So, you know, pick your battles when you're most likely going to be able to stick to your monk mode routine.
With monk mode, Rob, do you find that it's a chicken or egg scenario when it comes to a goal, i.e. you go into monk mode and then you think, actually, I've got this time, I should work towards this goal, or you set the goal and then you design and put your 3 to 4 month monk mode in place to hit that goal?
Yeah, I think the latter. So, for example, my goal was to get back on stage, and I think bodybuilding is the ultimate form of monk mode. You know, there's a reason people still compete and prep. Okay, we always go, oh, it's so tough. Oh God, I'm struggling right now. Then why are you doing it? Then why are you doing it? You're doing it because you like it. I like it. You know, we all like it, or there'd be no industry. We all like it, you know. And so I think, you know, picking that goal and then building your monk mode around that. So maybe, and for another example would be like you want to launch your new business, you know, you want to launch a new product, just something, or maybe, you know, not competing, you want to lose like 20 pounds and get your health in order. That's probably the most noble thing there is to do. That's health is the most important thing in the world. So whatever it is, I think you pick that one thing and then you build your monk mode routine around it.
That's great advice. And as you mentioned there about the struggle, I've been a long-term subscriber. I think it's a Jordan Peterson quote. I'm sure it's attributed to him and many others about choosing your suffering. But that reminds me of a recent post you did where you put up a picture of your old fella for coffee and that he presented you with a case with his army medals. I think it was Beirut, Lebanon, Iran, and then a military service one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, in Iraq. Yeah.
Yeah, which is incredible. But he said, in not so politically correct terms, because you put up the politically correct version, so I'm curious to hear what he said, that we're really lucky. I'm looking forward. It was like one of the first things I made note of. I need to ask you, because he said, you know, you put that we're really lucky, we live peaceful lives, and we don't realize how lucky we are. And I want to talk about that daily perspective and living in gratitude, but talk to us about what your old fella said, the non-politically correct, and then we can take it from there. Because I think when it comes to that perspective, choosing your suffering, the struggle, like stepping on stage in bodybuilding and prepping and going into monk mode is not the same as being out in Beirut or Lebanon or Iran. Like, they're not even comparable, but sometimes we feel like they are in our own heads. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so Rob Lipsett Senior, he's the real G. He's the real monk mode, you know. People think I'm disciplined. That's where I get it from. But so yeah, the unpolitically correct thing, he actually just touched on all the rapings and killings that country would see there, you know. He went really graphic, and he was like, you get hanged in public if you break the slightest rule, and that we don't know how easy we have it in Western civilization. So that's more or less not word for word what he said, but pretty much, you know, he touched on those vulgar topics like rape and hanging that I was like, Jesus Christ. And so when I'm actually terrible on like Instagram captions. Sometimes I'll type something out and I'm like, Jesus, that reads wrong. But when I can say it, and that's why I love YouTube. That's where I've built my audience from YouTube and podcasts. Why I started my podcast, because I can express myself a little bit better and I can use tonality. But that's what he basically touched on, and just said how fortunate and we are to kind of live in this part of the world, and that there's a whole other dimension going on in a sense, and we don't even realize it. So, you know, we should be so grateful, and we've got life on easy mode.
With that then, and that's obviously a massive anchor in your own life when you've got Rob Senior putting that visual into your mind, because then you just can't complain about having to get up and do fucking cardio or do legs. Yeah. You're like, actually, never mind. Just like, I can't complain.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, with that in mind, is that the thing then that helps you stay and again, I won't touch on something we've touched on before because we talked about that power of positivity in a previous podcast, but that's something that I always attribute to you. And one of the things I love so much about you, about your content, it's so positive in terms of how you project yourself out there, how you speak about others, how you speak to others. And in a world of social media where the smart thing to grow is to throw stones at other people and to be a prick, you don't do that and have grown very authentically. And I think you'll never get somebody who's not jealous of you say a bad word about you. And I've never heard anyone who knows you, myself included, ever say anything bad about you, because you have beautiful positive energy. But how do you keep that? And how did you not let social media, for the lack of a better term, push you in a different direction because you'd have been going for more subscribers, more followers, etc.?
Yeah, it's like the current trend is, especially with vertical content, is to react to someone giving bad advice and tear them a new one. And look, I get it. It's funny sometimes. You can do it in a clever way, and oftentimes the advice that the original poster is giving is fucking terrible, and that's all well and good, but it just doesn't sit right with me. I'm like, that's someone's like son, or that's someone's like, brother. And like, imagine like, you logged onto Instagram and you just see like what your best friend getting fucking torn into and like everyone laughing at them. I just don't like it. I don't think I'd honestly be able to like post that taking the piss out of someone, like editing them as well to make them look bad, even if the advice is terrible, and then like going about my day. I'd be like thinking about it all day. Like, I don't know, I just, it doesn't sit well with me. I would just feel weird or something. So instead, I'm gonna just put out legit information instead. Instead of, for you to get your message across, you don't have to tear someone else down. So that's the way I look at it, and I see everyone is doing it, and I've never done it. I'm like, I think it's I don't want someone else on my page, talking shit. I think the whole thing is weird. So I just don't do it. I think it is all over. It's altogether a negative thing. And what I think would be cooler is if like you had a back and forth with that person. Maybe you're like, hey, let's do a podcast debating it, and I can show you why what you're saying is non-evidence based or is bad advice. Have a civil conversation instead of like screen recording them and like doing this, like saying horrible things and getting all your fans and followers to like direct hate at them. Yeah, I think it's like that's one thing that doesn't sit too well with me. I understand why people do it, gets a good reaction, but just not my style, Yeah, so that's my take on the kind of, I think it's called stitching or like reel, when you react to someone's things. I just don't really bother with it.
Yeah, there's a Charlie Munger quote that I love that he says you should criticize broadly and praise specifically. And that's how I approach social as well. Like, I will be the first to criticize and approach because I'm like, well, that's horseshit. Like your slimming tablet injection, yoga pose. Like, I'm like, that's horseshit. Like, just control your calories.
Leave a comment under their post so you can have a back and forth or something, But yeah, I get it. I get why people do it, but I'm just not bothered,
It's really interesting because and this reminds me of social media and probably the best and the worst of it. I've had two podcasts in recent memory. One was with Dr. John Jaquish and the other was with Dr. Tim Spector. Two people who put out a lot of stuff but have quite strong opinions on their approach, and I brought both on the podcast to speak about it and in a back and forth, and I was like, look, I agree with you here, I don't agree with you here, but the amount of shit the infographic got when I posted, they were like, I can't believe you had him on the podcast. I was like, did you listen? They're like, no. Not one person was like, no. Like, they're like, I'm not listening to that. I'm like, well, for fuck's sake.
Well, that's so close-minded of them. I haven't watched the Tim Spector one because I watched him on the Diary of CEO, and again, I don't agree with pretty much like 90% of what he says, but I'm still not gonna like tear him a new one online. But I think that's so cool what you've done to bring him on the podcast. Yeah, and how did it go? I'm gonna go watch it after this.
Yeah, it was really good. It was one of those that you go in, I find, when you're preparing, because I put quite a lot of preparation into the podcast, and you're going in going, right, I need my evidence to support what I'm going to say here, just because, like, very smart guy, Tim's a lovely guy, Dr. John Jaquish was the same, really nice guys, but have very strong opinions with their evidence to support it. So if you're coming into a counter argument, you have to be quite prepared. Like, it's coming to you don't want to go to a war with a knife, to use an analogy.
Correct.
for more. Like, you need to have your evidence to support it. But it was a really interesting conversation, probably less inflammatory, because obviously me or you, we have a nutrition background, we have a fitness background, so it's easier to make counter arguments versus somebody that doesn't have that and might not have the context. So it was an interesting one. But it does, I want to bring it on, because obviously not bringing this on to me and who I've had conversations with, but on the Game Plan podcast, you spoke with James Blackwell, or it was a conversation between the two of you, and you spoke on there, and this is something that I didn't know about you, about the negative self-beliefs, and that you were a default quite a negative person. And I do remember in our previous conversation, you spoke about how you did poorly in school, you saw the Fs, and I was the same. We've got a very similar backstory when it comes to how we traditionally did in school. But something that we didn't touch on was that you had all those negative self-beliefs, you had that negativity bias, and you had to change that. Now, Rob, that took me years to build up the confidence in myself and start to see things in a positive light. How did you manage to change such a difficult thing? Because you're up there, one of the most positive people that I know. So how did you go from someone with a default negative self-belief and negative personality around certain situations to where you are now? I know that's a very Pandora's box of a question, but take it any direction you like.
Yeah, I like it. So me and James are actually going for dinner on Saturday. He moved out here to Marbella, so he's a great guy. Just super into, like, you know, business and that whole not a meathead like us. So yeah, you should get him on. I'll make that intro if you want.
Yeah, please.
Really good guy. He's actually, like, so for someone who is, he's certainly not corporate, he does whatever he wants, but for someone who's very, like, you know, in the business side of things, he talks a lot about, like, energy transference and quite a spiritual approach. So it was a really cool conversation. But in terms of shifting my mindset, I did it overnight. I honestly fucking did it when I went to bed and when I woke up. I went to bed, okay, and, like, my life was like Groundhog Day, just like what I was talking about. I look back on not the year to date, but 2 years to date, my life was the exact fucking same, if not worse, because I was older and had still made no progress in life. And this was it when I was attempting to go to college and just failing year after year. I come back, so school's terrible, left that, managed to get into a college course that I hated, and I thought this was the only way to go about things. I think one really good thing that social media has brought us, side point, that, we're led to believe social media is terrible, it's done so much negative things, which it has, it has. But in terms of positive things, I think it's highlighted just the amount of different routes you can go in today's world and the amount of opportunity out there. There's almost endless job roles and endless ways to make a living nowadays, which I think is great. So, but if you rewind back to when I was about, 10 years ago, like when I was like 20, 21, there was, just that typical route. You go to college, and then you hand out your CV and you apply for jobs afterwards, and that's pretty much it. And so I was led to believe that, and I went to college, still very unsure of myself, didn't even know what I wanted to do, thought I wanted to be like a nightclub owner or something. I was like, I like going out, I'll be a nightclub owner, I'll try something, okay, anything, or work in a nightclub. I still just didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I noticed my life was just completely stagnant. I was failing year after year in college. And then it was, so fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you. I failed my first year of exams, and I said, all right, I'll try to do them again. And then again, I couldn't concentrate in college. I was, my attendance was close to zero. And then when the end of year exams came, lo and behold, I failed them all again. And so they're like, hey, do you want to go back to first year again? And I'm like, I'm going to look like fucking Billy Madison at this stage. Like, honest to God, like, I'm going to be the biggest kid in the class, not in a good way. And then so I was like, okay, I need to completely do a life overhaul. I need to be so clear on what I want my life to look like, what I want my future to look like, what I want my day-to-day routine to look like. And so I read the book, The Secret, super, super basic. It's like the primary school self-help books. It's like the foundation. And just basically what I read it in like a few days. And what I got from it is just your thoughts determine your reality. It's just as simple as that. And I said, oh, damn, of course. Why didn't I realize this? So I read the book and I went to sleep, And I woke up the next day and I was like, today I'm just going to think different things. And like, what are your thoughts? Like, they're like these things moving around in your head. Like when you think of something right now, like where do you feel yourself thinking these images? I feel them in like the back of my head. I feel them like here. Okay, this is where I feel my thoughts are. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to just change if I have a negative thought, I'm going to just fucking look at the positive. I'm going to look at the opposite, right? I'm going to just do this in my head and I'm going to see how my day goes. I'm going to see how my week goes. So the next day I woke up, I said, I'm going to think of the best possible outcome of everything. If I have a negative thought, I'm just going to fucking think the opposite in my head and I'm just going to see how my week goes. Okay. Lo and behold, life changes overnight. Everything starts to fall into place. I start thinking better thoughts then. I'm like, what am I passionate about? What way do I want my life to go? And then I said, I love fitness. The gym's the only thing I'm consistent with. Everyone always asks me for training and nutrition plans. How can I help them with this? And so it was from that overnight, just from when I read the book and then when I woke up the next day, my life just completely changed and I started going on this journey in the fitness industry that is all documented in 1080p HD on YouTube, and you can see it all from there. But it all just started with changing my thoughts overnight. When are you going to do it? I know it takes some people a while, but you can just wake up tomorrow and say, look, I'm going to just completely change my mindset. It has to begin somewhere. And that's what I did.
I love that. And what I love so much about it, for those who have listened to this podcast for a long time, is I took way longer. So to know that there's two sides that might happen for you is really important, because there's going to be people who instantly listen to that, Rob, and click tomorrow, their thoughts are going to be more positive. And then there's others that need a little bit more of a runway of time with it. You mentioned there the question, what am I passionate about? And again, feel free to take this in any direction, but I'm a big believer in questions. Like one that I come back to regularly is, will this thing nourish me or will this thing deplete me? Whether that's a person, a company I'm going to work with, a brand deal, anything. Do you have a favorite question that you come back to regularly? Because what am I passionate about is a really important one for people in their early 20s, possibly even before and after, to ask themselves. Is there any one that comes to your mind when I say that, in terms of one that you refer back to regularly?
What do I not mind doing for a very long time? What gives me... Obviously the whole, there's going to be tough moments, even if you're doing something you're passionate about, there's going to be times when it's a bit of a struggle. When you see the end result, like a client, just giving you that life change, hey, I'm just feeling so good. Hey, these are my results after 12 weeks. Or even someone comments on a YouTube video like, oh, your videos have changed my life. I've put together my own training plan or something. What just gives you that fucking feeling where you're just like, yes, I'm on the right path, yes. And so for me, it's when I get that feedback, either from the comments online, which I get the nicest comments ever. Like I get very little hate compared to the amount of love I get. And when just some clients that I work with directly, or be it on the app, when they just give me amazing feedback. When I get some of that feedback from other humans, I'm just like, fuck yes, we are go. I'm doing the right thing. So think of and that could be, let me think of a completely other example. Maybe you don't work with people, maybe you make things, maybe you're an artist, or you're a carpenter, or you're a builder, and you make something and it's just, you're like, fucking beautiful. Yes, I'm happy with that. So whatever work gives you that feeling of oh, yes, then that's how you're on the right path. So I don't know the word for that feeling, but just the fuck yes feeling.
I love that, and you can get that in so many aspects. It's weird. I had one of those fuck yeah feelings at the weekend with my daughter. My daughter's 8 now, and I don't post her on social media. I don't post her on my channels. That's just a choice that I made years ago. Yeah. And I remember she came to me at the weekend and she was like, I didn't know you were on Instagram. And I was like, that's amazing to me that she goes through and this thing that is a big chunk of my business and my life. I was like, you're not on that. And that's partly to explain to her in 8 years when she's 16 that it's a highlight reel, that you're literally the most important person to me in my entire life, and you're not even on my channels. And to give perspective down the line, if she's struggling as a teenager, might not pan out, but it's how I'm trying to play it right now. And I think all those check-ins come, whether that's, you know, somebody comments and says, look, you lost a load of weight, you look great, or somebody asks for your phone number that you never thought would ask. Like, they're all things that you're like, oh fuck, okay, what I'm doing is working with my nutrition or my training or my life in general. Rob, you mentioned deep work earlier about doing those 3 to 4 hours in the morning, and that's something that I wish I had started probably 10 years ago. I've been doing it for the last 5-6 years religiously, where, similar to you, I have a couple of hours in the morning that's all creative based, and that's where I do all my creative work. Is there something outside of that that you have been doing recently in the last year or two that you wish you started 5 or 10 years earlier?
That is a great question. So just first of all, on the deep work thing, for anyone listening, okay, so, you know, what would you define deep work as?
Anything creative where, like, it's funny because we both went airplane mode on our phones before this podcast, and we're both trying to have this great conversation to catch up with, you know, ourselves and for everybody listening. So that's a version of deep work. For me, though, there's another layer underneath it. When I'm book writing or creating anything solo based, where it's just non-distractive creative work. I'm not reacting to emails. I'm not reacting to anything. It's just creating something from nothing is what I call deep work.
Yeah, nice. And so my way of deep work as well is just focus, undistracted. And the way I set it up, just I'll go on to the 5-year question now, but I love the deep work thing, okay? Like, I just want to say my perfect morning of deep work, okay? Wake up at, like, you know, 6 or 7, it's still dark outside, go up into the office where I am now, and, you know, you open the laptop, you've an energy drink, you've got some, like, electrolytes, you've got your little setup, and just, it's all quiet outside, the phone is off, and just for 4 hours, that's what I do. So every morning, you know, I'll do 7 to 11 deep work, or 12 now, and then, you know, go to the gym, and then that's like the majority of my work done for the day, because all first thing in the morning I'll do, obviously, you know, some calls, you know, replies and everything in the evening, but all the deep work, the main stuff is done 7 to 11. And a funny story, okay, once I was staying in this apartment, and I was like, I had to stay there for like about 2 months. It was in Dunleary in Dublin, because I was like, the place I was moving into wasn't ready yet. So I was staying in this place, and it was kind of in like an office block. And so I could see directly into the office down below me. You know, it was like glass. It was all glass. So I could see, and I was quite close, and I could see what people were doing on their computers. Okay, so I'm just there like watching from the shadows, okay? And I could literally see these people clock in at 9 and leave at 5, and they'd be on fucking Facebook all day. They'd be like, just like opening up different tabs, looking busy, because like, you try to look busy for their boss. And I was like, oh my God, like, these people are here from, you know, for 9 hours a day almost. And they could just, like, all they need to do is 3 hours deep focused work in the morning, and you get the same amount done. So just deep work is the answer. Just 3 hours of undistracted work is going to be so much better than 9 hours you fucking around. Anyways, so that's my take on deep work. I absolutely love it. It's such a nice, peaceful and rewarding way to start your day. And so your question was, the other one, I always go off on tangents. The question was, the other one, what do I wish I had started doing 5 years ago? So that would probably be investing a little bit as well. So I wish that's something that I've kind of learned a lot more about finances ever since buying a villa here in Marbella, and kind of just looking more into like property, real estate, and also, you know, cryptocurrency and stocks as well. So, and learning about what's it called, compound interest as well. You know, I just watched a documentary, How to Be Rich, with Ramat. You know him,
Ramat Sethi.
Like, yeah, that's it. Yeah, so he's brilliant. So I guess, you know, that's a pretty typical answer. And another thing is, I always wish I did more content. You know, like, that's like the best, that's what's today's currency, in my opinion. And, you know, I always wish that, I'm someone that does a lot, and I always wish I did more. You know, I think that's how you build like an insane online business. That's how you build an insane, like, hardcore community. And so, I always wish I'm doing more. But again, that comes back to the productivity thing we spoke about.
Yeah, it's funny with that deep work, just to add what you said there. I had Robin Sharma on the podcast, who wrote The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, amongst other incredible books that had a massive, profound impact on my life. But he always mentioned, I have it right here beside me on the right-hand side of me as I'm doing this podcast. He just said, be world class. And that, when it comes to deep work, it's like, just be world class in whatever it is you're doing. And that aspiration, even if you don't hit it, shows that you're going to be able to do better than the majority of people, i.e. the 3 hours of deep work versus the 9 hours of just fucking around on Facebook. And that goes for the gym, that goes for your work, that goes for your family and being present with loved ones. There's so many areas that goes into. And with the things that you, again, would have started sooner, it's funny, we all get that when we kind of hit our early 30s. It's like, right, let's learn about compound interest, let's learn about investing. Like, it's just one of those things that I think is important if you're kind of happy with life, because it's just setting yourself up financially. Rob, I just have a couple more questions that I want to jump and kind of throw at you. Something that I've struggled with and that you seem to be very good with is that mind running a million miles an hour, that constantly going to that productivity. Now, I have a very similar default type A, but I find that sometimes it can become overwhelming, that I can't calm my mind down enough. Now, training is very grounding for me, but if you remove that element of my life, I've struggled with it a little bit. I still have to do cold exposure, heat, things like those extreme stressors just calm my fucking mind down. How do you, if at all, keep your mind calm so that you can be creative and you can be productive? Because generally those things can't come together. You can't have this overwhelmed mind going a million miles an hour and be creative and productive in most cases. So what do you do to keep your mind nice and calm so you can hit that high level you set for yourself?
I had this exact day on Monday. Okay, so like a few days ago, right? And so my partner Linda is fantastic at this. Like she's a great asset to me as well. She helps me focus. You know, she helps me work harder. She gives me great advice, and she levels out my head when it needs to be. Okay, so she's a great asset. Having a good partner will make you more money and make you more productive and improve your business. Picking a bad partner will do the exact opposite. They will offload all their bad traits onto you. So the most important decision, well, one of them at least, that we make in our life is choosing our partner. So make sure that your partner is an asset, not a liability. So that's one thing I've been looking into a lot recently, of course, since, getting engaged, and, we're talking about, the wedding and getting married and everything. I've been watching a lot of stuff on the importance of choosing the right partner. But so to go back to it, on Monday, I was having a day where I was trying to do 10 things at once and achieving nothing. Like when you try to do 10 things and you're so distracted, you just do fucking nothing. It's like when you've so much to do, you end up doing nothing. So she was like, relax, take a breather, let's get out in nature, go for a walk, jump in the sea, and let's have dinner on the beach. Okay, and that's another reason why I relocated to Marbella, is because the nature here, having the sea, the sun. But even you can do this in Ireland as well. It's amazing. I love swimming in the Irish Sea. But so that is exactly what I do. I drop everything. Leave the phone in the car. I just completely drop everything and I get out in nature. Be it a walk or a swim or both. That's what I did on Monday, walk and a swim, and then just maybe just treat yourself to something nice, like a good healthy meal out, don't worry about cooking. And so that's exactly what I did. Took 3 hours out of my day, 6 to 9 in the evening, that's when we did it, and that just reset me, and I woke up the next day just feeling more creative and ready to go. And I said, all right, I need to do this. I wrote out my list, and in order of importance, I said I need to do this, and just cleared my head. So that's what I do. Nature is powerful. And just do something relaxing.
I know the non-logical thinkers who tend to lean more into the emotional side are going to absolutely hate me for asking this question. But when it comes to choosing a spouse and the potential filters to run that through, my brain automatically goes to logical. Okay, what's the filter that I need to run this through? Obviously, the heart wants what it wants. But I'm curious, did you have a logical filter for that when it came to, and for people listening, as you mentioned, the right spouse can make you more money, have a more successful business, will obviously lend to more love and more happiness. But did you have a filter? And feel free to, even if you don't want to share your own personal one, what you recommend people maybe look at it through.
Yeah, so there's a brilliant one. You don't have to take every single one, but there's a brilliant one by Rich Cooper. I'm not sure if you know his stuff. He's he's a little bit red pill, manosphere type, but he's still really good advice. And he has a 20 red flags. list to go through, you know, when looking for a female partner. It's really good. Rolo Tomasi is another guy that, you know, he has some crazy takes as well. I don't agree with everything, but, you know, he has some good ones as well. But yeah, you know, the first one I said there, the 20 red flags is a good one for people to have a look at. But yeah, you know, there's definitely some non-negotiables. But so for example, like ones that come to the top of my head that I am, you know, very adamant on is has to be into health and fitness, okay? You got to keep yourself in shape, got to keep yourself tidy, okay? And you got to be into working out. Got to also like the kind of lifestyle that I live, and you know, got to be open-minded, got to be always fully honest and loyal. You know, there's just few things that, you know, I'm adamant on. But if you want to go into more detail, there's a really interesting one. There's a few controversial ones in there. The 20 red flags by Rich Cooper, yeah.
Well, what's the most controversial one? Not necessarily one that you agree with, but what's the most controversial one that you remember?
I don't know them off the top of my head. I'd have to get them up, but yeah, it's thorough. It's thorough.
Yeah, it sounds it. I'm just curious on that, and then we'll wrap up, Rob, because again, I've got one more final question that I want to ask before I send people
I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah, me too. But with that, in terms of the choosing the correct spouse, did you find that past experiences led to future success with that, or was it very much a case of expanding your own knowledge with Rich Cooper's red flags, or was it a combination of both? Because sometimes people will be in a breakup and they'll have heartbreak and they're like, well, that was a waste of time. Nothing came from that. When in fact, I've been a long-term subscriber that the seeds of failure plant trees for future success in most things, relationships included. What has been your experience with that? Without getting into specifics, just generally, did you find that education and experience, or was it a combination of both that led to the quote-unquote success in this case?
Great question. Okay. And so I was in a super long, I think it was over a 5-year relationship before that. And we ended up breaking up. And so it was my first time being single in my 20s, pretty much ever. So this, first of all, you know, learned a lot from that as well, as we do. But this forced me to start researching relationships the way I do health and fitness. So I'm like, you know, I will read health and fitness research all day. I'll watch health and fitness content all day. But this is the first time I went down the kind of, relationship side of things and consuming all that content. And so I took a masterclass even on dating, getting into a long-term relationship, picking the right spouse for you. So absolutely, you know, a big breakup caused me to learn so much. And I think heartbreak and breaking up is something that is unavoidable at some stage in your life for 99% of people. The odds are the first long-term relationship you get in, you're not going to marry them. You know, you're not going to be like, hey, this is the one. You know, especially if you're fucking 16 or 18 or whatever it is. You're so young at that stage. But it's going to teach you so much. It's going to teach you a lot. And then, you know, they say, what is it? They're like, the first relationship, you know, taught me this, the second taught me that, and then the third one, you know, there's a few quotes on that. But you know, with every relationship you get in, you're going to learn a lot, and then you'll find out what are your non-negotiables and what values do you both need to hold. So yeah, it'll improve over time. But yeah, I definitely learned a lot back in the day.
That's a fantastic answer. Rob, I've just got one final question. Before we get into that, for anyone that is listening that wants to follow you, obviously the Instagram page is massive, the YouTube channel, I'll link them all in the show notes, the podcast, the game plan. Is there anywhere specifically you'd like to send people? Now, obviously the book I'll link and people can check that out as well, of the same name, but anywhere particular you want to send people, please give that now and I'll link them all in the show notes.
For sure. I presume you got a good few Irish listeners. So if you want the best protein pancakes in Ireland, made in Ireland as well, fuelcakes.com. Go check them out. I just relaunched 3 new flavors about 2-3 weeks ago, so it's been one hell of a month. You know, it's been a big month, so that's why I'm chilling out and having a little bit of downtime. But fuelcakes.com, they're absolutely delicious. If you want something that will help you stick to your diet, something to look forward to every single day, I'm about to go make a stack now. I always eat them. I don't have them for breakfast. I have them for lunch and dinner personally. But if you want something that'll make your diet a lot more enjoyable while keeping the calories and macros in check, go hit them up.
I'll link those in the description for people as well. And that gives me an unintentional segue to a different question that I'm going to ask now, because if I'm not mistaken, is Fuel Cakes where you have to claw back the 30%?
Yes. So yeah, you know what? I'll quickly go into that. So when I was living in London, a kind of like an influencer agency approached me, and they're like, "Is there any product that you would really like to make? You know, be it clothing or supplements?" And I'm like, "That is so done. Like they're the two things that are just everyone fucking launches." So I'm like, "What's different? What is my first ever viral video? What do my audience love? What do I make in every single video?" And I went back to my first ever viral video 8 years ago, and it's me in like that fucking shared accommodation, complete mess with about 16 different ingredients on the counter. And I'm like, okay, how do I make a more convenient version of this? So boom, Fuel Cakes was born. The response has been amazing. And then it was so good that, I was like, okay, I need to, get back this 30% because these guys are just not as passionate about it as me. There was a lapse in communication, complete breakdown in communication. They take like weeks to answer an email. So I said, I need to just take this into my own hands and blow this thing up. So that's what I did. We got there eventually. There was a lot of like contracts involved, and had to split the bank account 70-30. They're in the UK as well, so it added a bit more time to it. But look, this is business and we're all good now.
With that then, for the final question, what's a lesson you learned from that experience that will potentially help you with other experiences outside of business down the line?
Getting into not only a business, but a relationship in any way, like a friendship or a romantic relationship, or in this case, a business relationship, getting into that is like getting into bed with someone, okay? So really vet your inner circle, vet your friend group, who you're going to partner up with. Be very careful of who you let into your life, okay? Be very selective. So that is the lesson that I learned there. Do your homework.
Mic drop. Rob Lipsett, thank you so much again. The trilogy, they always say save the best for last. I'm sure this won't be our last conversation, but in terms of this podcast...
It's not. It's going to be like, the Rocky series. There's going to be like...
Fast and Furious. We'll have episode X in the next few years.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking forward to episode X.
Yeah, me too. Rob, keep doing what you're doing. Keep inspiring. And mate, thank you so much again for your time.
Brian, you're a legend. Thank you.
There you have it, athlete and entrepreneur Rob Lipsett on where motivation comes from, getting out of your comfort zone and the importance of choosing the right spouse. An unbelievable episode. I'm so glad we got to do this trilogy podcast, and Rob is one of those people that I could literally have a 3-hour conversation with. If you enjoyed today's podcast and you're first time listening, make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button for episodes coming every single Monday. And if you're a long-term listener of the podcast and you haven't left a rating or review for the podcast yet, can you please do that off the back of this podcast? I try and read as many as I can, and it helps me get tremendous guests on that can hopefully provide you with loads of value in the future. That's everything from me from today's podcast. Thanks so much again for listening. Catch you all next Monday.